Cornell was born Christopher John Boyle on July 20, 1964, in Seattle, Washington, where he was raised. His parents are Edward Boyle and Karen Cornell. Cornell described both of his parents as alcoholics. He was the middle child of 6 children. He had 2 older brothers and 3 younger sisters. After his parents divorced, the children would adopt their mother's maiden name, Cornell. He attended Christ the King Catholic Elementary School, where he performed for the first time in front of a crowd, singing the 1960s anti-war song, One Tin Soldier. He later attended Shorewood High School. When he was in 7th grade, his mother pulled him and his sister out of Catholic school, Cornell claimed because they were about to be expelled for being too inquisitive. Chris traced his musical influences back to Little Richard via the Beatles. He spent a 2-year period between the ages of 9 and 11 solidly listening to the Beatles after finding a large collection of Beatles records abandoned in the basement of a neighbor's house. He described himself at this age as a loner. He was able to deal with his anxiety around other people through rock music. Cornell took piano and guitar lessons as a child. He once explained that his mother saved his life when she bought him a snare drum, the instrument he adopted in beginning his path to become a rock musician. Before becoming a successful musician, he worked as a busboy, as a dishwasher, as a fish handler at a seafood wholesaler, and was a sous chef at Ray's Boathouse in Seattle.
With you back on the Headbangers Ball with Kim and Chris from Soundgarden. You know, Chris, I read in an interview from Axl Rose that he said that he thinks you're like the best vocalist out there.
Wow.
Did you are you friends with those guys or?
We met him. We met Axl.
Uh-huh.
He came to a couple of our shows.
I know he's a big fan of yours.
Yeah.
Now, earlier we said that you guys are from Seattle.
Mm-hmm.
What's the rock and roll scene like out in Seattle?
It's boss. It's better than anywhere else.
Pretty much like it is in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
Less tattoos.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
It's better than your crummy town.
Soundgarden was formed in 1984 by Cornell, Kim Thale, and Hiro Yamamoto, with Cornell originally on drums and vocals. In 1985, the band enlisted Scott Sundquist as the drummer to allow Cornell to concentrate on his vocals. In 1986, Sundquist decided to leave the band to spend more time with his family. He was replaced by Matt Cameron, the drummer for Skinyard, who became Soundgarden's permanent drummer. Soundgarden signed to Sub Pop, releasing the Screaming Life EP in 1987 and the Fop EP in 1988. Though the band was being courted by major labels, they signed to independent label SST Records in 1988 to release their debut album, Ultra Mega OK, for which they earned a Grammy Award nomination for Best Metal Performance in 1990. The band subsequently signed with A&M Records, becoming the first grunge band to sign to a major label. In 1989, the band released their first album for a major label, Louder Than Love. Following the album's release, Yamamoto left the band to finish his master's degree in physical chemistry at Western Washington University. He was replaced by former Nirvana guitarist Jason Everman. Everman was fired following Soundgarden's tour supporting Louder Than Love. In 1990, the band was joined by a new bassist, Ben Shepherd. Along with Nirvana, Alice in Chains, and Pearl Jam, Soundgarden quickly became one of the most successful bands from Seattle's emerging grunge scene in the early 1990s. With Shepherd, the new lineup recorded Bad Motorfinger in 1991. The album brought the band to a new level of commercial success, and Soundgarden found itself amidst the sudden popularity and attention given to the Seattle music scene. Bad Motorfinger included the singles Jesus Christ Pose, Outshined, and Rusty Cage. The 3 singles gained considerable airtime on alternative rock radio stations, while the videos for Outshined and Rusty Cage gained considerable airtime on MTV. The song Jesus Christ Pose and its music video was the subject of widespread controversy in 1991, and the video was subsequently removed from MTV's playlist. The band's fourth studio album, 1994's Super Unknown, proved to be the band's breakthrough album. Upon its release in March of 1994, Super Unknown debuted at number 1 on the Billboard 200. The album launched several successful singles, including Black Hole Sun, The Day I Tried to Live, My Wave, and Spoon Man, amongst others, and brought Soundgarden international recognition. Super Unknown achieved quintuple platinum status in the United States, triple platinum status in Canada, and gold status in the United Kingdom, Sweden, and the Netherlands. The album was nominated for the Grammy Award for Best Rock Album in 1995. 2 singles from Super Unknown, Black Hole Sun and Spoon Man, won Grammy Awards, and the music video for Black Hole Sun won an MTV Video Music Award and a Clio Award. The band's 5th album was 1996's self-produced Down on the Upside. The album spawned several singles, including Pretty Noose, Burden in My Hand, and Blow Up the Outside World. The album was notably less heavy than the group's preceding albums and marked a further departure from the band's grunge roots. Soundgarden explained at the time that it wanted to experiment with other sounds. However, tensions within the group arose during the sessions for Down on the Upside, with Thale and Cornell reportedly clashing over Cornell's desire to shift away from the heavy guitar riffing that had become the band's trademark. Despite favorable reviews, the album did not match the sales of Super Unknown. In 1997, Soundgarden received another Grammy nomination for the lead single, Pretty Noose. As tensions grew within the band, reportedly due to internal strife over its creative direction, Soundgarden announced it was disbanding in April of 1997. In a 1998 interview, Kim Thale said, "It was pretty obvious from everybody's general attitude over the course of the previous half year that there was some dissatisfaction." On January 1st, 2010, Cornell alluded to a Soundgarden reunion via his Twitter account, writing, "The 12-year break is over and school is back in session. Sign up now. Knights of the Sound Table right again." In April of 2010, Soundgarden announced their plans to headline Lollapalooza 2010. On April 16, 2010, Soundgarden held a secret show at the Showbox Theater on First Avenue in downtown Seattle. And asked in August of 2010 if Soundgarden will record new material, Cornell replied, "It would be exciting to record one song, to hear how Soundgarden-ish that might be this much time later. But for me, it's been more of a trip relearning the songs and playing them together. Some of the songs we're approaching we've never played live." In the summer of 2012, Soundgarden released a new single and video, Live to Rise, for the Avengers movie soundtrack. Their 6th album, King Animal, was released in November of 2012 to largely positive reviews. Soundgarden had continued to tour worldwide, and guitarist Kim Thale mentioned in several interviews that the band was to begin work on material for the 7th album.
You are a political band in a way.
I think we're a rock and roll band that makes music, and we also have other interests. And you know, we can use the influence that we have as a successful rock band in any way that we want. Rolling down the street, smoking, sipping on gin and juice, laid back with my mind on my money and my mind.
Audioslave was formed after Zach De La Rocha left Rage Against the Machine and their remaining members were searching for another vocalist. Producer and friend Rick Rubin suggested that they contact Cornell. Rubin played the Soundgarden song Slaves and Bulldozers for the remaining Rage Against the Machine band members to showcase his ability. Cornell was in the writing process of a second solo album, but decided to shelve that and pursue the opportunity to work with Tom Morello, Tim Comerford, and Brad Wilk when they approached him. Here, Tom Morello describes Chris Cornell. "He stepped to the microphone and sang the song, and I couldn't believe it. It didn't just sound good. It didn't sound great. It sounded transcendent. And when there is an irreplaceable chemistry from the first moment, you can't deny it." The 4 band members wrote 21 songs during 19 days of rehearsal and began working in the studio in late May of 2001. Their debut album Audioslave, released in November of 2002, spawned hits such as Cochise, Like a Stone, and Show Me How to Live, and has reached triple platinum status in the United States. The band was nearly derailed before the album's release. Cornell was going through alcohol problems, and a slot on the Ozfest tour was canceled. During this time, there was a rumor that Cornell had checked himself into drug rehabilitation. He later confirmed it in an interview with Metal Hammer that was conducted from a clinic payphone. In a San Diego City Beat article, Cornell explained that he went through, quote, a horrible personal crisis during the making of the first record, staying in rehab for 2 months and separating from his wife. The problems were ironed out and Cornell remained sober. The band toured through 2003 before resting in 2004 to record their second album. Audioslave's second album, Out of Exile, was released in May of 2005 and debuted at number 1 on the US charts. The album has since gone on to achieve platinum status. The album features the singles Out of Exile, Be Yourself, Your Time Has Come, and Doesn't Remind Me. Cornell admitted to writing his most personal songs ever on this album, influenced by the positive changes in his life since 2002. He also described the album as more varied than the debut and relying less on heavy guitar riffs. Critics initially described Audioslave as an amalgamation of Rage Against the Machine and Soundgarden, but by the band's second album, Out of Exile, noted that they had established a separate identity. The band released their third album, titled Revelations, in September of 2006. Revelations was influenced by 1960s and 1970s funk and R&B music. The first 2 singles were Original Fire and Revelations. 2 of the songs from a third album, Shape of Things to Come and Wide Awake, were also prominently featured in Michael Mann's 2006 film Miami Vice prior to the release of the album. Despite the exposure to other forms of media and the positive critical buzz for their third album, Audioslave did not tour behind the release. They went into hiatus to allow Cornell to complete You Know My Name, the theme song for the 2006 James Bond film Casino Royale, and Morello to pursue his own solo work under the moniker of The Night Watchman. In February of 2007, Cornell officially announced his departure from Audioslave, stating that, due to irresolvable personality conflicts as well as musical differences, I am permanently leaving the band Audioslave. I wish the other 3 members nothing but the best in all of their future endeavors. As the other 3 members were busy with the Rage Against the Machine reunion, with De La Rocha coming back, and Morello and Cornell had each released solo albums in 2007, Audioslave officially disbanded.
Do a real thing, like what Temple did. Why not?
We
totally got away with it.
Yeah.
Nobody.
You think I'm gonna say no to that?
I don't know.
Yes, I'm so down.
Yeah.
It'd be amazing.
Yeah, it's just a matter of carving. Really, I think to carve out a group of weeks, even if it's a while away, where we just kind of commit to it, and that's all we have to do. Because that's what we did at the Temple.
I think
you're making him uncomfortable.
We'd all love to do it. I know. Yeah, let's work that out. That would be awesome.
That's gonna be my evidence. So, Tom and Tim, no, see, Brad said that this is what's going to happen.
Brad's holding the whole thing up, man. As usual.
Sitting back.
3 was too little.
It's only 3 albums, but it's actually a whole. That's a long ass show where you did where you have to go out of your way to play a song that's not kind of a hit.
Yeah.
Because they all kind of.
Yeah.
Many songs get gasoline.
It's exciting. Fucking gasoline.
In January of 2017, it was announced that Audioslave would reunite for their first show in 12 years at Prophets of Rage's anti-inaugural ball, protesting President Donald Trump's inauguration as President of the United States. The event took place on January 20, 2017. Asked in February of 2017 if there would be more Audioslave reunion shows in the future, frontman Cornell replied, "It's always a possibility. I mean, we've been talking about it for at least 3 or 4 years now. We were talking about actually picking dates, and it just ended up not working out because everybody's so busy. They have another band again. They all have separate bands that they do themselves. I have Soundgarden and a solo career that's taking up a lot of time, and I just did Temple of the Dog. So it's really honestly as simple as we end up having a window of time where it's comfortable for everybody and we want to do it, because I definitely feel like everybody's up for it. In 1998, Cornell began working on material for his debut solo album. The album, titled Euphoria Morning, was released in September of 1999. In his first ever solo tour, Cornell spent 7 months on the road, playing 61 shows in support of Euphoria Morning. The album's breakthrough single, Can't Change Me, was nominated for Best Male Rock Vocal Performance at the 2000 Grammy Awards. Cornell recorded a version of Can't Change Me in French. This version is a bonus on Euphoria Morning's deluxe version. The album also includes the track Wave Goodbye, Cornell's tribute to his late friend Jeff Buckley. The album was re-released in 2015 on CD and vinyl and retitled Euphoria Morning, with Cornell stating in the press release that he had originally intended the album to be called that, but at the time that his manager suggested that Euphoria Morning without the U would be a better title. On June 5, 2007, Cornell released his second solo album, Carry On. It debuted at number 17 on the American Billboard charts. Among the artists who accompanied him on his second solo release was friend Gary Lucas, who contributed acoustic guitar to some of the tracks. Cornell has stated that he is always writing, and that there are some songs that he was not able to put onto an Audioslave album. While recording his second solo album, Cornell was involved in a motorcycle accident. He was apparently rear-ended by a truck in Los Angeles while riding his motorcycle and catapulted 20 feet into the air. He was able to walk away from the accident, but had severe cuts and bruises. He returned to the studio later that day. Cornell worked with producer Timbaland on his studio album Scream, which was released in March of 2009. Timbaland has referred to the recording sessions as the best work I've done in my career. Cornell called the new album, quote, a highlight of my career. The album was largely panned by critics, but was the highest charting album of Cornell's solo career, reaching number 10 on the Billboard 200. In November of 2011, Cornell released Songbook, an acoustic live album featuring songs recorded during Cornell's Songbook tour in North America. It was his first live album as a solo artist and includes stripped-down solo performances of songs from Cornell's whole career as a solo artist, as well as with Soundgarden, Audioslave, and Temple of the Dog, plus covers of Led Zeppelin's Thank You and John Lennon's Imagine. The album received largely positive reviews, with AllMusic calling it Cornell's best solo offering to date. Cornell continued his songbook tour in Europe and the US during 2012 and 2013 to further acclaim. In January of 2015, Cornell announced via his Twitter account that he was in the studio recording a new solo album. It will be Cornell's final studio album, titled Higher Truth, and was released in September of 2015. The last solo release prior to his death was the charity single The Promise, written for the ending credits for the movie of the same name about the Armenian genocide. Prior to his death, Cornell committed all proceeds from the song to support refugees and vulnerable children. In 1985, Cornell started dating Susan Silver, the manager of Alice in Chains, Soundgarden, and Screaming Trees, and they got married in 1990. They had a daughter, Lillian Jean, born in June of 2000. He and Silver divorced in 2004. In December of 2008, Cornell reported via his official website that he had finally won back his collection of 15 guitars after a 4-year court battle with Silver. In 2004, he married Vicky Karagiannis, a Paris-based American publicist of Greek heritage. The couple had a daughter together, Tony, in September of 2004, and a son, Christopher, in December 2005. In 2012, the Cornells created the Chris and Vicky Cornell Foundation, which works for homeless, poor, abused, or neglected children. In 2013, a portion of proceeds from ticket sales went to benefit the cause. At around 12:15 a.m. on May 18, 2017, Cornell was found dead by his bodyguard in the bathroom of his hotel room at the MGM Grand in Detroit, after performing at a show with Soundgarden at the Fox Theater on May 17.
It's great to be back here. Honestly, I love you guys up there on the top shelf, but you gotta stand up and show me something. I have bragged about Detroit crowds for 30 years, so stand the up and make some noise.
Many of us who know Chris well noticed that he wasn't himself during his final hours and that something was very off. We have learned from this report that several substances were found in his system. After so many years of sobriety, this moment of terrible judgment seems to have completely impaired and altered his state of mind. Something clearly went terribly wrong, and my children and I are heartbroken and are devastated that this moment can never be taken back. We very much appreciate all of the love we have received during this extremely difficult time, and are dedicated to helping others in preventing this type of tragedy. On July 11, 2017, the Detroit Police Department released the full police report, photographs from Cornell's hotel room, and the 911 call from the MGM Grand Detroit from the night of Cornell's death. The call was made by a hotel employee at 12:56 a.m.
Detroit 911. What is the address of the emergency?
1777 3rd Street, the MGM Casino. I'm here, 21.
Tell me exactly what happened.
I have a non-responsive guest in the hotel. It's going to be a 50-year-old male inside of room 1136.
Okay, non-responsive. He's not breathing?
No.
Is anyone doing CPR?
They're getting up there.
Hang yourself.
No. Did they start CPR?
They do hang yourself. I don't know.
Okay, so they found out that the guest was attempting to hang himself, so they're trying to get him down so they can assist with CPR.
Okay, I'll request units.
Okay, can I get your operator number, please?
19.
Thank you very much.
Cornell's body was cremated on May 23, 2017. His funeral took place on May 26 at the Hollywood Forever Cemetery in Los Angeles. Attendees and speakers at the ceremony included Soundgarden members Kim Thale, Matt Cameron, and Ben Shepherd, and former members Hiro Yamamoto and Scott Sundquist, along with Audioslave's Tom Morello and Pearl Jam and Temple of the Dog members Jeff Ament and Mike McCready. The mourners included friends and families, as well as many notable musicians and others. Cornell's ashes were placed next to his friend, Johnny Ramone. During his solo concert in London on June 6, 2017, Eddie Vedder talked for the first time about Cornell since his death, saying, "He wasn't just a friend, he was someone I looked up to like my older brother, and I will live with those memories in my heart, and I will love him forever." Cornell's former Audioslave bandmates paid tribute to him during a Prophets of Rage concert in Berlin on June 7, playing an instrumental version of Like a Stone with a single spotlight shining down on an empty mic at center stage as the audience filled in on vocals. In a 1989 interview with Rolling Stone, Axl Rose declared, "I enjoy Soundgarden. The singer just buries me. The guy sings so great." Rose also stated that Cornell was the best vocalist in rock. Eddie Vedder declared in a 2009 interview that Cornell was the best singer that we've got on the planet. In April of 2017, Scott Stapp stated that Cornell was the greatest pure rock singer. I'm really a huge fan of him and everything that he has done. I just think all around that he is an extremely talented artist, songwriter, singer, and guitar player. I think he'll go down in history as one of the greats. After hearing about his death, Alice Cooper stated, Chris Cornell, in our circle, was known as The Voice because he had the best voice in rock and roll. I was lucky enough to write and record 2 songs with him. His death comes as a total shock to all of us. Black Hole Sun will live on as a classic, and his is a true legacy of rock and roll. Following his death, the sales and streams of Cornell's discography grew by more than 550% from the week prior to his death. On platforms like Spotify, Apple Music, and Pandora, his songs were streamed 32.5 million times during the week in which he died. The charting week prior to that, his tracks were played 5 million times. That same week, 38,000 copies of Cornell albums were sold, which represented a 1,700% gain in purchases. The week before his death, only 2,000 units were sold. Several songs and albums by Cornell populated Billboard's rock charts, including 7 new entries on the Hot Rock Song Survey. After Cornell's death, Guns N' Roses would add Black Hole Sun into their set as a tribute to the late Soundgarden frontman. And at the 2018 Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, Alice in Chains' Jerry Cantrell and Heart's Am Wilson would pay tribute to Cornell with a rendition of Black Hole Sun. So all you have to do is look at Chris Cornell's discography there. All those albums, all the quality material contained therein, and it is quality. Songs that appeal to the masses, really. All age ranges can get into Chris Cornell's music. If you're not into his heavy rock stuff, you might like his solo stuff. And his solo stuff could be pretty diverse too. For example, his album Scream didn't really get great reviews by the critics at the time when it came out. But I mean, I've listened to that album. It's different. He wasn't afraid to take chances. There's some really good tracks on there. It's like hip-hop mixed with Chris Cornell. I mean, it's not your classic Soundgarden or rock stuff or whatever, but he wasn't afraid to take a chance, and some of it's actually pretty cool. So some great albums, a ton of killer tracks, and a lot of quality material that Chris Cornell produced in his time. It was very hard to believe and to take it in when you heard that Chris had passed. Such a great shock. Now there's some celebrities and some rock stars, etc. You hear that they've passed and they've taken their own life or whatever, and it's like, okay, that one's not such a big surprise or anything. You know, we could kind of see that coming, you know. He was kind of headed that way. But with Chris, it was like he must have kept it pretty damn well hidden, because in all his interviews and stuff like that, I mean, he seemed pretty clear-cut to me. They wouldn't be a guy that would do this sort of thing, and you know, you add on the wife and the kids as well, it makes it even more of a shock. And so some people may say, well, you can look at his lyrics. A lot of those lyrics are pretty dark, and they were, with the Soundgarden stuff and Audioslave and stuff like that. Some of them were. But even in saying that, he still didn't come across as someone who I think would ever do this. And it was a shock to many. It was a shock to all of his fans worldwide. And so I've since gone back and learned and read that Chris had some substance abuse problems in his past and stuff like that. stuff that I may not have necessarily known about. So, you know, no one can say. But still, with even all that taken into account, you know, he always came across as a pretty bright and sort of energetic and happy sort of guy in all his interviews anyway. I know you can't just tell off an interview or whatever, but, you know, with the music he made, it was upbeat, energetic. You know, his music was inspiring. The voice that came out of the guy, you know, was inspiring. And I think it's just a great loss to the world, to the music world, for his family. You know, that guy had real talent. You know, one of the best rock singers on the planet, no doubt. So much great material. You know, so much quality material. So many songs. I could just start listing them off now and I'd be here till midnight. I mean, if they ever made a true Soundgarden best of, man, that would rock. That album would rock. And Audioslave. And all his solo stuff. His solo albums are cool. You know, I've gone back and listened to a lot of his solo records, and they're awesome. And so you can see the influence that Chris Cornell had on many people around the world just by looking at some of these tweets that came in when he passed. That just shows how much the guy was respected and looked up to. So we don't know what happened with Chris at the end there. Of course, nobody does. It's hard to believe that when he finished that show with Soundgarden, after walking off stage, you know, he passed like an hour later. He was gone. Unbelievable. Was it some kind of accident? I don't know. I'm just guessing. I wouldn't have a clue. It's just so hard to believe that this would happen to Chris, that Chris would do this. And, you know, you got to feel for his family and all his fans around the world miss him greatly. So here's a few lines I came up with that I thought would be a good description of Chris and his music. Rest in peace, Chris Cornell.